To News Diary. Now, I want us to go to Spice FM today. They're talking to Hakamba Wangwe. She's the Career Chief Manager, eTeams Management System. Today, the discussion is on the eTeams deadline, and they're addressing emerging hiccups in that sector. Let's listen in.
What do you mean?
How do you transmit the invoice?
You generate, you need to be connected to the internet.
Okay.
So you make sure that the invoices are actually coming to our end. And we also have continuously, you'll notice the past public notices we've had, even if they're on an unrelated issue concerning eTeams, we'd always say we'd wish to remind registered taxpayers to continue generating invoices through the system and make sure that you give your PIN if you intend to claim input tax. You can go back.
So you may need to explain what that means.
Okay.
And maybe that's part of the reason why there's been slow compliance. It's just not understanding. If we are assuming somebody who has a handheld gadget, those physical gadgets. Okay. So somebody goes and keys in the details of the tax invoice that they're generating. Previously, with the other ETRs, you do that and then that was it. Now you're saying that once you generate this, you should be generating this while you're connected to Wi-Fi,
to the internet. Or at some point in the day, you might not be on Wi-Fi all the time, but you need to connect and transmit.
Connect and make sure that it transmits.
Yes.
And then that is the only time that now you will be able to make your claims for it.
Basically, what a valid tax invoice is the one that is validated and transmitted.
Okay.
Validated and transmitted. So now even if you on board and you switch off internet and you're generating invoices, because they all have offline capability, as long as you're not transmitting, then that is not a valid tax invoice. And that's why we provided measures to check the validity of the invoice. What you do even as an end consumer, you visit a premises, you try to scan the QR code or you check the invoice number through the iTax portal. It should show you that this invoice has been transmitted. Okay. So there are many entities that up to this point, they had not complied to that. The other thing that was coming up is you've heard from Rotich that there's the classification of the items. Even in Teams, it's there. And you need to have proper classification for general rated, for exempt, for zero rate. So for exempt and zero rate, there's a particular item code that you need to quote to say whether this item is zero rated or exempt. Now, these two, the tax rate is, we'd say zero. Let's say zero, even for exempt. But the tax treatment of the two is different. For zero rated, what happens is that it comes with it an incentive that if you have a zero rated supply, you can claim input tax on those supplies. So if you incur VAT, you can claim input tax. So that's why we've separated them. But then at device level, now when it comes to the system, what taxpayers went and did, combined the two when it came to their inventory, so that zero and exempt are in one list. So what happens? It's transmitted, and because I said the system worked well, it all goes to zero rated. And then they come back, hang on, how come all my zero rated and exempt are in one, but you did not separate them? But just to just keep the long story short, maybe even for generation of credit notes, the law allows credit notes up to 6 months. But then when it comes to implementation, because what we did is give requirements, and we expected that taxpayers would adopt these requirements so that you comply with the tax law. But if there's somewhere where for one reason or the other the tax requirements were not met, then the validation in the system will not accept that. So for the issue of not capturing buyer PIN, what we experienced was that it was in two areas where you visit, you are buying something from another supplier, you either don't give your PIN, and that affected many people, or from the supplier point of view now, this is a bit complex. The person who is supplying to you, when it came to his own configuration of the system, as much as you gave the requirements and said, capture PIN here, we have a template. PIN goes here. You saw the receipt I showed you. Item goes here, and the tax amount goes here. Someone goes and interchanges and probably maybe just puts PIN somewhere. When it comes to transmission, what happens? The PIN is not picked by the system because it's not where it was supposed to be found.
Okay.
It's not picked. So what happens now when you come to the auto-populated return, these other people you sold to can't find their purchases.
Because of erroneous placement?
Yes.
Okay.
Can't find their purchases. So Zippy was inconvenienced, and you can hear from her voice.
Yeah.
But because of issues that happened here and there, towards the end of that day, we really needed taxpayers to file their returns. The outcry was huge, largely because of something that happened on the trader side that was not addressed, either for them themselves, but for Zippy, you can see the person she bought from did not comply with the requirements, and Zippy was inconvenienced.
Can I ask how long it takes for KRA to rectify something like that? Because obviously you've seen an erroneous placement, then would mean that one is unable then to manage their returns, essentially. One would have to wait easily 2 to 3 weeks before KRA will come back to you and say, okay, now everything is fine, go ahead. What's the process of rectifying that erroneous transaction or that erroneous information?
Okay. So maybe what I need to clarify again, when you're looking at such an implementation, look at it from the perspective of what KRA needs to do. Also look at what the taxpayer themselves, for example, giving your buyer PIN so that it's captured, it's the taxpayer responsibility. When it comes to now the system is configured well, depends. If the taxpayer did the configuration themselves, it might be the taxpayer's responsibility to correct that. But then it might be also the third-party vendor who may have made a mistake in the configuration and they need to correct those devices.
Now, how
so
do I know?
Just wait. KRA's responsibility is to pick such issues so that now when it comes especially to vendor issues or taxpayer issues, we are able to point out to them, and we have done that. For example, for the vendors, we actually picked the issues of Zippy and many such. We looked at the vendors who largely had were being reported, and we zeroed in on 7 of them. And we gave them a list of the complaints that we have received, have given them timelines to correct that, and it is our responsibility to make sure that that is done, and so that the next time we switch on the system, then the taxpayers are not inconvenienced the way they were inconvenienced this time.
If it lapses in terms of time and she's supposed to be filing, anybody's supposed to be filing, and it's this, what happens? Is the person penalized because they've missed the date, knowing full well that what we are waiting for is this regularization?
Okay. So maybe what I need to clarify also for credit notes and for purchases, any taxpayer, the law still allows them 6 months to claim input tax or to declare a credit note. So there's 6 months period by law, and it's how we've implemented it in the system. But still, when it comes to return filing, the return filing, for example, for VAT needs to be done by 20th. If someone, for one reason or the other, should require an extension to file their return, then they can make an application, give a justification.
If in this case, this reason is because of this erroneous information, that at this point we're waiting for KRA to regularize, before then I can now have my complete basket, which I then file. So what happens in this case? Because it is not me. I'm ready.
Again, still coming back to, we have 6 months to claim input tax, and credit notes still 6 months. But bottom line, KRA is going to take responsibility to make sure all the players do the right thing, including the compliance checks and enforcement. But at the end of it, in fact, when you look at the regulations for VAT, electronic tax invoicing, the responsibility is placed squarely on the user of the register to make sure that it is working well, to make sure that it is transmitting well. KRA, being the regulatory body, will provide oversight for this process. But at the end of the day, each individual taxpayer needs to take responsibility so that the whole ecosystem works well. So we had to switch it off, yes, at last minute, as Zippy said. And what we are doing is that we remember I've said we've reached out even for the ETR suppliers. We're also looking forward to the taxpayers. Once again, we are reminding all taxpayers, transmit your invoices. Where you need to claim input tax, give your buyer PIN. We will be back, but these measures need to be in place, because when you switch it on, once again, the validations will be the same in line with the provisions of the law. Oh, sorry. Oh, that was the second question.
Yes. Now
I forgot I had more.
Let's go to the doctors.
So we have Peter. No, we haven't finished with Peter.
Oh, yeah.
So he has the Android device. The Android device, even for this phone, there's a limitation. When you have the solution on the phone, it means really that when you have to print, of course, you have to connect it to printer. The issue of it saving in PDF, it's an issue that we've carried along with us and a process of enhancement that needs to be done so that it can do that. But for the time being, yes, it needs to be connected to a Bluetooth printer. He mentioned about the item code, which I think I've responded that it's being enhanced so that we have more items featuring.
Okay.
Now I go to my friend.
Before the Daktaris, the Android and laptop, the one where if it's the app is loaded and verified on this particular device, it can only be this device.
Because the software is loaded on that device. It's like when you download an app. When you download an app, if you have more than one phone, the app will be on the phone which you downloaded the app.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that not an inconvenience in some way? Because a taxpayer has downloaded the app. Let's say they even came with a laptop and you downloaded it on that particular laptop. Because I've had also some cases where they're saying this is the only laptop that can transact with KRA. Musiguzei. If it crashes, it means that this person has to go back all the way to KRA, queue with their new gadget for them to be configured in another gadget.
Okay, so the issue about reporting to KRA is because once the software is installed on your system, you have a KRA system in your own devices. We have incidences where suddenly the laptops or the tablets are crashing a lot or getting stolen a lot, and the fires are also a lot.
Yep.
But the provision that we have given, if you don't have access to your system again, according to the regulations, you must report. You must report because in the period you don't have access to your system, then it might imply a revenue loss on our end. So the reporting is why you have to come back to KRA, but you can also send an email. However, when it comes to reinstallation, once you have, if you have technical know-how, most taxpayers prefer to come back. But if you have technical know-how, you can be guided on how to do the reinstallation.
What's so complex about this thing? Why can't it just be like an app? Go somewhere, find the app, download, go ahead. Or just use the online system. Why must I have an app on a specific gadget?
There's an establishment of trust. And even in this filing period for VAT, you'll be surprised at how many taxpayers came to us and denied their own sales and said, absolutely, I'm not the one who generated this sale. So that initialization process is so that we also have that, it links you to that device so that at the time you are denying, we can actually be able to tell you there's a reason why we know for a fact you are the one who generated these invoices. So coming to the security features that actually go with that app. That's why it has to be installed on that particular device. But then I need to qualify that also. For people who have branches, yes, the software might be on one device, but then you have branches. From that one software, we can actually create branches where it can be used on several other outlets, so that you can actually use the same software in multiple versions of it.
And all those gadgets must be brought to KRA.
The one that has the software, what I'm saying is that the taxpayers actually normally prefer to come back. But if someone can be guided to do the installation themselves, they don't have to come.
Are you sure they prefer to come back? Or are they finding themselves having to come back? I mean, it's a cost of compliance.
Yeah.
This is times that somebody is spending going to a KRA office out of their busy business as a small SME. And they're spending time queuing, waiting for their gadget to be installed, this thing, and then they go away. And
yeah,
it's a cost.
Yeah, it is. But we've had some who've been able to. First of all, we've provided the information on the KRA website. Those ones who can be guided, because you need to you see, like the way you download the software and then you need to find it and install it. They just need to be guided how to do that, but they should be able to do it on their own.
Okay.
Yeah.
Doctors.
Now, doctors. Dr. Kigondu. Thank you again for reaching out. He's been very active in this front. I explained about the issue about the capture of details, and I still reiterate the details. First of all, when it comes to the description, especially when you look at the the simplified solutions, we took them through, and Kigondu was there. We took them through. We did walked through the device, and they were able to see. When it comes to description, it is you. I don't know what disease he said he was healing from you, but it is you who enters what details need to be entered in the device. As a doctor, it is not KRA saying, hey, you need to give me details of that procedure that was done. The only thing that I failed to do, actually yesterday what I was trying to do is bring you a list of the list of taxpayers or the doctors who've onboarded. And by the way, right now we have like over 500 and a few major hospitals in Nairobi. So what I was looking at is really confirming the concern that we have about confidentiality. And I was looking at the item description. Most of them have captured medical services, for example. Medical services, lab services, because as I mentioned earlier, our main concern is the information that is going to lead to the determination of your taxable liability. So we are not really interested to know do alienda hospitali kufanya nini. No, we just want to know that what she paid actually is being accounted for by that clinic when it comes to their liability. So I'm still going to maintain. I know Simon is going to dispute, but I'm trying to still explain that the information that we capture is generic. What we are interested in is what is going to go to determination of tax liability.
So and this is what you are telling the doctors.
I'm still repeating that. Yes.
You do not have to put the details like they do, because he's saying this is what we are used to.
This is what we
when we are doing, because we have been dealing with insurance companies, and for insurance companies, I have to go into great detail of this is the reason, this is what I did with this patient, and this is how much it costs. For the insurance company to basically look and see, can we confirm that this is corresponding? You're saying for KRA, you can just write medical services.
We don't need the details. What happens also is that even as they're going to the insurance, because what they were explaining was that when they generate the invoice, it's part of the documents that go to insurance, and the invoice needs to be detailed. For KRA purposes, we said generic information. The file will contain the details, and maybe the claim form, the other documents that they attach will contain the line-by-line details of whatever these medical services meant for purposes of claiming insurance. And we are saying also that we are not changing how like doctors, for example, operate. We are not going to change that. We are not going to be suddenly interested in the details. We are not doctors of what someone is being treated for. But we are asking how much were you paid and was your tax accounted correctly. That's all we are asking for. And if the concern is for confidentiality, how do we have over 500, as I checked last week, over 500 medical facilities on board? And I'm going to mention 3 major hospitals in Nairobi are already on board. How have they circumvented that? I've seen their invoices they are transmitting, and I can assure you the issue of data confidentiality has been addressed, and they have not disclosed what they are treating from those patients. Where they need to capture PIN, I have mentioned the person who needs to claim the medical expenditure is the one who is going to offer their PIN. Otherwise, you could feel that maybe I don't want to disclose this. Maybe my next of kin don't know that I'm going through this for one reason or the other, in which case it may not feature in your income tax return. So it's just the clarity that I need to provide, that the issue of confidentiality is addressed, and the reason why most of the doctors now have onboarded.
Okay.
But the point of invoicing, the issue about, I think there's a concern, and I think you really talked about it, about them treating someone and then they raise the invoice, but at point of insurance, either they are paid partially or they are not paid at all. Now, for us, when it comes to determination of tax liability, it's coming from the point of either income earned or income accrued. In the case where someone has not paid you and it goes to insurance, and maybe for one reason or the other, they did not agree to pay the whole amount, you can reverse that amount, and the provisions are in the system to be able to reverse. You account for only the taxes that are due from you. and that provision is there. So maybe the other administrative issues I think they would have to pick with is why insurance or NHIF is taking too long to pay them, because now that won't be within my scope to talk about. There might be other reasons on the other end, but we're just explaining for KRA, you account for the invoice is a record of transaction. It's actually saying this transaction was completed and this is how much it was worth, whether you are paid or not. But then at the point where you realize that this payment is not coming through, and it happens in the medical field, sometimes someone doesn't make it and they can't pay. There's nothing much that can be done. And therefore, there's provision to reverse that supply, and no issue from us because such things happen.
Okay. Does it also apply to other businesses where you have billed, you've issued an invoice, but then your client takes forever and a day to pay?
Yes, actually, in fact, when we are talking about these provisions, I'm not talking about the doctors alone. These provisions are there across board. So we are not discriminating against others that these provisions are not there.
So in the case of pending bills, you issued an invoice to county government, national government, whoever, and you've gone 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, you still haven't been paid. You see, as far as KRA is concerned, I recorded a sale 12 months ago.
Whether I've received it or not is
yes, and in that sale there was some VAT, and I was supposed to remit the VAT on the 20th of the next month. So what happens in this case?
The tax point still applies, especially for VAT, because VAT is whatever that comes earlier. You've rendered the service. Have you rendered the service? Even if you've not done the invoice, you have raised the invoice, but you've not rendered the service, but the invoice is out. Or you've received payment, but you've not done the service, you've not raised the invoice. Whichever comes earlier. Whichever comes earlier.
Okay. Time for one more question, actually, but let's pick the ones in social media. There are very many.
Yeah, there are quite some. Okay, so Wairimu was asking, can you put two-factor authentication to verify users on any device instead of requiring that a specific device must be used? There must be technical ways around this.
Yep.
So why is removal from special tables such a headache? Even after registering on eTeams, 2 months later, I still cannot file my VAT. We can take those.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. So the issue of two-factor authentication, maybe the clarification I need to make, the solutions that we have are actually according to how, can we say, superior or inferior, I don't know which word to use, because the ones who are on system-to-system integration, for example, they are more flexible with their solutions. They can have more than one user using. They can give, like the way they're saying, give passwords to various users so that at different points someone can be able to use that solution, and maybe one ERP can be used maybe across the country. But then here, when we talk about the solutions that we have, like the client solution, really it was aimed at a small taxpayer. So if you have a taxpayer who is more advanced, they probably need a more advanced solution that they also don't minimize the space they have when it comes to their efficiency, because they've limited themselves to a solution that probably a small taxpayer should be using. So each solution has its own limitations, and those ones on the system-to-system integration, they'll find that they are having a better experience, more flexibility in what they want to do, and basically more efficiency in their operations. Now, removal from special table. First of all, this is an enforcement measure. Whenever someone, for example, is non-compliant when it comes to filing their taxes, someone has not been transmitting invoices, is a non-filer or non-filer for an extended period of time, it's a restriction. Basically, what we are doing is drawing out that taxpayer to, if that person doesn't exist, and we've had people on the special table for the longest time not complaining, not do anything, the next consideration would be like, okay, so do we disable these pins? Because this person does not exist. But definitely this person exists. When they come forward, that person exists. And what the stations would be doing now, that the tax stations will be doing an analysis. It's not only about onboarding it, so that's the information that a taxpayer needs to know. There are other non-compliance issues that have been identified and need to be addressed, and the station will walk that journey with you. They may have to raise an assessment, you may have to pay taxes before you are removed from the special table. So one case might not apply to everyone. Another person might just be because he didn't onboard eTeams, in which case it's very quick. But then for some, there's a bit of a check that needs to be done. Okay. So what I would advise these taxpayers to follow up with their stations and to address the issues that have been raised so that they can be removed.
Is this deadline? When is the deadline?
Deadline is 6 days to come. So it's 31st March.
Where? And so what happens beyond the deadline?
No, I would actually like to say that we still have 6 days. They're just on board. You'll find most of the solutions that we have, even USSD. I don't know, you said you used it. How long did you navigate through it? Have you used it?
This was a quick one.
Yeah, just on board. Just take 2 minutes on board. We'll talk about invoicing later.
So first of all, get into the system.
Let's not talk about then what. The law as it is.
Yeah, what does the law say?
It did not have provision for extension. So even the 31st March was I think like a grace period, so to speak, because we realized many taxpayers had not onboarded.
So